Say that again for the camera.
It wasn't. It was cute.
She did what?
It wasn't at all. No, she came and then you did. Sat in my chair.
I did sit in your chair.
Curled up her legs underneath her.
That sounds
And
right.
said, "Hi, I'm Sarah Murphy. I'm going to get out of this. I want to be a court reporter. And I'm going to get out of this program as soon as possible."
Yeah.
I did say
sounds
that.
like me.
Yeah, as soon as possible. And I said, "Okay." So I thought, yeah, you don't really know.
Oh no, I sensed that. Yeah.
But she did.
So then
And
that
she
was
got
the
out.
under my butt.
And she did, and she got out in 50 weeks. From the start of theory. She didn't even have the A to Z thing. She got out in 50 weeks from start to finish. 0 words a minute to 225 words a minute. 50 weeks. Now she can tell you how she did it. I know how she did it. And she now has a life.
Not really.
She had no life when she was in school. But anyway, so she's one of our huge success stories. This is another one back here. So it can be done. Just listen to her. It's good to see you. She's so pretty too. She's a pretty girl.
Okay, so I guess I'm supposed to give you all my secrets. How long do I have? I don't
I don't
want
everybody know, but
to. I don't want to be like really
Just
boring.
though.
and annoying.
There's time.
Okay.
If your class is over at 9, you have up until then.
So 10. I got this. This is my dream, guys. Just have y'all here for an hour and a half. Okay, so who has a dictionary? I'd like to just start by just reading that for the first hour, just to. Okay, so I started in fall of 2014, I guess, and I had kind of done some college or a good bit of college, and then found out about this and jumped right into this. At the time, I had a photography business, and I kept doing that through school, and I also taught piano lessons and was a maid at a vacation property, which I don't recommend at all. That's kind of gross, and I probably need to go get tested for some diseases after I leave from here because of that experience. But I did that, and then I was also working with my church, so I had about 4 jobs I was juggling through school. But that was good. I feel like almost being that busy kind of created a need for structure. So I would come to school, and I would sit in class, and I would do the dictation that they give in class, and that's what y'all will find. Theory class is going to be probably Monday through Thursday. Is that the way? Yeah, I think it's Monday through Thursday you're in class. And so they'll give you about 3 hours of dictation in that period. And so I highly recommend, if you can go in class, then do that. So I would go in class and then leave and go teach my lessons or do whatever kind of jobs I had set up. And then I would also then set up at a coffee shop because I cannot be productive in my own home at all. I'll end up watching The Office in bed, eating popcorn. It's true, yeah. It's definitely, that's me. And so I had to get out and I'd go to a coffee shop, and that was good because it got me kind of experienced at listening to dictation and filtering out distractions, whether it be people moving around or noise in the background, and that'll be really good because when it comes time to take your testing, you know, that's already kind of a stressful time, and so it's going to be good to just feel like, hey, if I could get a dictation at 5 minutes in a coffee shop with a barista grinding beans, then I can do this. And so then what I would do with that is I would go back over, like if I had a chunk in class that was difficult, SAC will post the, and what I'm going to, pretty much this is how I would suggest kind of practicing as much as you can. SAC would post the dictations that they did in class online. So I would go access those and find something that was particularly tricky or that I thought, oh, that was a good one to practice. And I would speed it up. And so I'll explain that to y'all a little bit, kind of like my method for practicing, how to kind of increase your speed quickly. But I would do that for a while, and then I would also use some other resources. There was a YouTube channel at the time. I don't know if it's still around, but there was a YouTube channel of a school that also put up their dictation, so I would do that. And then I would also access, just SAC has a really good database of pretty much an archive of a ton of dictations, and you can get them at every speed. And so I will kind of explain to you the practice method. But basically though, the main thing to know is that if you're going into class, do the class. I've heard from some students that somebody mentioned the other day that she doesn't like to go to class because she doesn't like to do read back. I don't know have y'all done any of that in here?
No, read back here.
Okay. So basically, I know it probably is as simple as it sounds, but just for those of you that don't know what that is, if in class they do a minute dictation, then they might say, okay, you read from here to here, you read from here to here, and just to kind of get you used to evaluating what did I just write and then being able to read it. And so I heard of a student that said, well, I don't like going to class because I don't feel like I am really great at the speed I'm in right now, and I don't feel like I can do read back well. Do not let any worry about that type of thing prevent you from coming to class. Just always keep going, and if you suck at read back one day, they're not going to deduct your grade or anything. It's not a big deal. So just go to class if you can. How many of you that plan on coming in January think that you can go in class? Yeah, raise your hand if you think that you'll be able to attend in class versus having to do it online. Okay, and who thinks they're going to have to go online? Okay, so for those of you that have to go online because you have jobs or kids or other extenuating things in life, it can still be done. But you're just going to have to be, I think, really structured with the time that you do have to practice in the evenings, or I guess it could be in the day if you work a night shift. Just be really structured and intentional with what you are doing in your practice time. So for that, I would for sure say log in, get the class that you otherwise would have sat in, go through all of that, and then if you have time, like maybe on your weekends or on your Friday, if they don't have I don't think they do class Friday, so then use Fridays and weekends to be your time to do other alternative sound bites outside of that class audio that you'll get to access online. So that way that you're still giving yourself variety, and those are kind of the times where you can push those speeds. So, as far as practicing, y'all will be starting at, is it 60? Is that the very first test that we try to pass?
40.
40? Okay.
It was 40.
Okay. The first test that you're going to be trying to pass is 40. So when they're doing dictation in class, once you're past your initial kind of theory, as far as speed building goes, I would suggest you know, like you're in your class, they'll automatically do some pushing where they'll be dictating and they'll start at maybe 30, 40, push up to 50, maybe 60, and then they'll drop it back down. And so they'll be reading it each time through a little bit faster, a little bit faster. And so when you're at home, I suggest getting that speed up a lot more. That's your time to make mistakes, to push yourself. You're not going to have somebody sitting over your shoulder wanting to hear a read back, so that's your time to kind of like get it all out, try to get a key for everything you hear. Even if it's not perfect, it'll start to get your brain and your fingers used to acting quickly. So let's say that if I was working on trying to pass my 60 test, let's say it's Q&A, I would go home and I would take a Q&A dictation, and I would probably start to do like a 10 to 20 to 30 second chunk of that. And I might start it at 60 and see where I'm at. And then I might bump it up to 70, bump it up to 80, bump it up to 90. As I'm going through that 30-second chunk, I would always keep a piece of paper beside me in a notebook. And any word that I felt like I was writing in 2 strokes, so let's say the word was paper. If I'm hearing it on the dictation and I'm writing paper, I would immediately go, okay, how can I make this word shorter? And I would find a brief for paper, create the brief. Then I'd keep going and I would hear the phrase, I don't want. And I would make sure, okay, I remember learning an I don't want phrase, so I would write down I don't want, write down what my phrase was, and I would just keep, as I'm going through the speed, I would continue to shorten the writing as I'm building up my speed. And so it makes it easier to build up your speed as you're continuing to find each word, like, okay, I can make this one shorter. So I think right now y'all are working on 1-syllable words. So all of those that's about as short as you're gonna get it. But as you get into theory and you learn multisyllabic words, you will have opportunities as you're practicing to say, you know what, every time I hear the word happy, I don't wanna write that into 2 hits. That's gonna slow me down. And so you might say, I like the brief HAEP, and just do it in once. And so that right there will already start to shorten your writing. And then when you are practicing those chunks, just remember to practice it to perfection. So as much as it might seem frustrating, like, oh, this is a hard dictation, You know, raise the speed, lower the speed, just constantly be playing with the speed so that your brain doesn't even really know what speed you're at anymore, other than keeping it within the parameters of, I don't think you should push it past 20 or 25% over what your goal speed is, just because then it's crazy fast. But constantly be adjusting that speed so that it's kind of keeping you on your toes. And then I suggest keeping that notebook there, and at the end of every practice session, you should have quite a good list of words and phrases. And by the end of that session, and it might be in that day, or it might take a couple days to get the whole clip down, and ideally, you would kind of have perfected it. And then from what that means is from now on, every time you start another dictation that has some of those words or phrases, that'll come back to you. That muscle memory in your fingers, I can guarantee you, will start to come back if you go into a new dictation and hear, oh, I remember that word. So just kind of remember as y'all start in January that you're practicing for perfection, mastery of the piece. So yes, as far as school goes, do y'all have any questions about starting in January? Anything that you want to know? Anything?
What did your week look like as far as putting in practice time?
Okay.
How much time did you
Yeah.
put in?
So I did the class time, which was the 3 hours, and then I would, at the coffee shop was probably another 2 to 4. And I would keep up in my notebook where I kept my words on the same page. I would also track how long, from what time to what time I did the practice to kind of, and how many pages I did, because I was always connected to my softwares that would count the pages. Mm-hmm. And so I would do that just to make sure that I didn't go to the coffee shop the next day and fart around on Facebook for an hour and then be like, oh, I've been here an hour. So I would really try to be cognizant of how much I've actually accomplished. But so total in a day on the machine was a good 5 to 7 hours. Sometimes then I would go back in the evenings and do a little bit more. And then even when I wasn't practicing, once I got to a point where I could maybe around 120, 140 words a minute, then I would just start writing to TV. If I was watching MasterChef or something, I would just kind of catch what I could just to stay on the machine and keep my brain going. I always took Sundays off practicing, and I felt like that was really good. Kind of like in music, before you go do a recital, you don't practice the day before because it's kind of like you just need that time for your brain to just relax. I took the Sunday off so that I could just do 6 days heavy and then take a day of rest and recharge and come back Monday full force. So, yeah. So as far as, because you said you're going to be working full-time?
Working full-time and I have 2 kids.
Yeah, that's going to be fun. But do you work like 9 to 5 or? Okay.
Yeah.
So for you, you might be good to just get home in the evenings once the kids are in bed, just get the class done that's posted online. And then, like I said, use your weekends to kind of compensate. But if you're very focused in that practice time, you'll be better than someone who shows up to class and kind of half participates and doesn't practice after the fact. So, yeah, definitely can still be done. So, yeah.
If I can say something there, because I have 2 mentees. One has 3 kids. Diana, she might have 4 now, but anyway, she has kids. She's a stay-at-home mom, and she was going to school. And that was one of the things she was like, you know, Erminia, I want to practice with my children. And I know all about children, so I knew exactly what she was talking about. So I said, well, you know what, Diana, this is what you're going to have to do. You're going to have to treat it like a workout session. Other people get up at 5 in the morning to work out. Well, you get up at 5 in the morning to practice. So I said, get up and practice before the kids wake up, before you have to drop off the kids at school, because she had like, I think 2 babies under the age of 3. I said, and then if you can, when they're taking a nap, practice for an hour at least. But if you can't, that's fine. Then wait till bedtime at 9 o'clock. After put them to sleep at 9, and then do your practicing at night. She was still able to put in at least 4 hours a day doing it like that. And then I had another mentee who works full time. Also, she has kids. Her kids are older though. So I told her the same thing. I said, well then, get your work early. Take your machine, get your work early, go to an office that's quiet, and do your practicing there before work starts. And then at lunchtime, take your lunch, and then just, if you can do at least 30 minutes during your lunch. And then practice again when you get home after you make dinner and everything before you go to bed. So even if you break it up, you can break it up 30, 30, 30. It's still very beneficial. But what's really important is scheduling that practice time and try and do it in like same place like Sarah said, like she goes to a coffee shop, that's great, but try to have like your own area where you practice it because you can be better focused with it.
Okay, yeah, thanks. Yeah.
I've heard the word briefs a lot. They haven't showed us how to. But is that like a program on a unit?
There's going to be different ways you can get briefs, and pretty much that's just like the colloquial term in the industry for a shortened form of a long word, essentially. So any word or phrase that would take a lot of hits to get to translate, you would make it briefer, shorter, and so we just call it a brief. And so there's different ways that you can get that. Often in theory class, your teachers might give you handouts with some brief booklets. You can also find there will be websites and resources that you can get once you're in the thick of it. What are some different websites? Do you have any?
Well, yeah, I do.
Okay.
But I want to show a brief, like this is DUD, okay? And I use my DUD because it hardly ever comes out, so I put D-U-D with asterisk, DUD. But that's my did you do. So you got three words in that one stroke, did you do. So that's what a brief is. You can get, so like this is fun, but you could also make that like, if you know.
This one could be if you had, if it were a short, minus the AU, if you had, yeah.
Yeah. Or, if you could, I mean, we can put all these different words together, phrases, but in one stroke. So that's what briefs are. But if you want, if you have an iPhone, I think there's one for the Droid now too. There's an app, it only costs $7.99. It's called the iSteno app, and I have it. And it's just a little app, and this is really good because if you want to know like a brief for any word, say I want to put enthusiastic in here. I write the enthusiastic, and then it gives me several versions of how to write that in one stroke. So it's called iSteno, and it's on the iPad and Droid.
So do you all ever use some of the social brief, like IDK? I don't know. Like,
That's,
you make up your own.
It's kind of like, that's a good question as far as that's kind of how you have to think of it, is for a lot of these phrases, it is kind of like that, but it's our own steno version.
Mm-hmm.
So like I was saying, if you had would be, I would just do FUD, FUD, and that would be if you had. I would do, so briefs can be for entire phrases or just a word that's really long, like even really. I know some reporters that still write out really in two strokes. I would do really in one hit just to save my time, save my hands. Yeah, and so, I would do RAEL, RAEL, yeah. So that's kind of where you'll start to, once you're in theory, incorporate some of that shortened stuff. And that's kind of going to be to your liking and what fits with your theory. But yeah, did you have your...
Yeah, so when you make your own little briefs, you're doing the, I guess, certification test. Do you have to read what you've written? Is that how they pass it then, if you each have your own individual way of...
Yeah, that's kind of, once you're in school and you learn your base theory, so you're going to want to learn your base theory well. And then once you're in speed building, that's kind of where it starts to become your language. So you'll still always have the roots of StenEd, if that's what y'all are learning. But then you'll have StenEd mixed with the briefs that you incorporated or the phrases that you incorporated. But then what's good about having that base is that if you're on a job and you hear a crazy word, if let's say you hear automatopoeia, and you're like, oh, I don't have a brief for that, but I remember the basics of my theory, and I can write out just phonetically automatopoeia. So you would always return to your base theory if you don't have a brief that pops up in your head. So when it comes time to test, how that process works is most of you, I would imagine, are going to just connect your machine to your student software that you will get, and you will have a dictionary that you will kind of build throughout school. You'll start building it. And when I say dictionary, basically all that is let's say I wanted to write this, I wanted to make this if you had. So I would write that, and then there's a way you can go in on your computer and say, make this translate in English to if you had. And so you just added that word to your dictionary. So that's all that the dictionary is. It's just kind of creating the conversion between steno to English. And so when you go to your testing, you'll set up your machine, you'll set up your computer, a printer, you're gonna log so much stuff to that. And they will play an audio, 5 minutes Q&A, 5 minutes literary, 5 minutes jury charge. And you'll write all of it. And then they'll give you so much time to edit it all. And so that's then when you'll be looking at what translated, and you'll go back and compare it to your actual steno, raw steno notes, and kind of merge the two and figure out what was I writing here, and fully get it punctuated and perfected in English. So yeah, whatever you write on that test will probably be slightly different from what she's going to write on that test or what he's going to write on that test, because everybody's writing will end up being kind of specific to them. Yeah. Yes.
So it's like after you make the briefs, so you had 20 of them, or many more.
Yep.
So basically you have to relearn or re-memorize different things to give you that word.
Oh yeah, a little bit. You'll have to remember that, okay, I found a shorter way to write, really. So from now on I'm going to try to incorporate that. But I wouldn't say it shouldn't change the way you think of your theory, because it's always going to be within the confines of your theory, if that makes sense. Like once you learn what your letters are and your sounds and what an F is and what a D is, your briefs are going to match into that. It's not like it's going to suddenly totally change what steno you've learned. It's just going to fit in within it and just help you write quicker. And
Just
that's how you're
practice
going
it. If you make it brief, just practice it over
Yeah.
and over, just like you would a word.
And when you practice it, it'll start coming to you just as fast as the way you originally
And if
learned
it
it.
doesn't, then you just move on and you just
Yeah.
write it out.
Yeah.
You'll figure it out. And
Yeah.
a lot of times they will come to you because a lot of times they're like giving you a hard time, that word is, and it comes up over and over. Those are the ones that you want to read.
And that's where your notebook comes in handy, where she says, write down the notes. I still have a spiral notebook that I write things down. And, because you never stop learning, even though you're an official for over 20 years or 30 years, and, you know, you're never going to stop learning. You're going to always keep learning, so. But that's where that notebook comes. That's a great idea, that notebook, because that's where you'll be able to refer, and those just stick easier when you have them all written out like that.
And that forces you in that practicing time or in class or whatever you're doing to just really remind yourself when you're listening to the dictation to kind of watch the words that you've picked out of it. And if you keep it kind of in order of the dictation, you'll always know like what's coming up next. And so it'll keep your brain thinking of, okay, what's the next shorter thing I can add to this? So I'm a big proponent of shortening your writing when you get to that point, but also just focus on learning theory solidly. And I feel like this is a really good place that all of y'all are here to, you've got 8 weeks leg up on what I had coming in. So if you feel like this is making sense, then I'm sure theory will be a breeze now that you've had this experience. Yes?
Silly question, but what made you want to finish in 50 weeks?
I'm like annoyingly hyper competitive, and also yeah. And then I also though had I felt like since I started school, I went away to a university and was on pretty decent academic scholarships, and then just kind of had a lot of just crap hit the fan with my personal life, and it caused me to end up being out of school and back with my parents through no fault of my own type situation. And so I was just really unhappy with where I was, feeling like this isn't fair, this isn't where I should be at 18, 19. Why did this happen to me? This doesn't seem right. And then through that time at 19, I had to then kind of start over and decide, okay, so I left the university I was at, and so that's when I started doing photography and just kind of taking some community college classes while I figured out what do I do now that I'm having to kind of start back at square one. And so once I heard about this program, I was 20, I think, and so I just wanted to be done with it and kind of make up for lost time that I felt like, you know what, I can't control crap that happened before, but I can control how I respond to it and rise above that and dust myself off and get to a place where I feel like, okay, I rose from the ashes and made something of that crappy situation. And so yeah, I definitely was also determined, I don't know, in my mind I had this number that I knew all my friends were gonna be graduating at from when they had started school. And so I felt like, well, if I could do this in 2.5 years, I would kind of be close. And so I ended up finishing the program before my friends graduated from the university anyway. So it worked out, but it was just kind of, I think, frustration that just fueled the fire of, I gotta fix where I'm at right now.
You make more money than most of them probably not.
But yeah, and that's what I've loved is that, and because I did it quickly, it saved me money because I didn't spend years in school just kind of languishing, because every semester that you spend extra in school, you're paying for it. So if you start to kind of think of it in that terms, that'll add for you the incentive to, every semester that you can shave off is money saved, that you can, and then also in addition to money saved, that's an extra period of time that you might be starting to work. So if you think of if you chart out how much you'll save in school and then how much you'll add in earnings potentially career-wise, it could amount to thousands of dollars. So if you start thinking of it in money, then y'all will want to be up really fast too.
Did you know what did you want to study at first?
Before I was studying political science and criminal justice So it was all, and that's the thing, it all worked out in the sense that now I'm back finishing up my bachelor's. I'm doing a bachelor's in court reporting, but the bulk of the classes at this point are criminal justice, legal, so it all just kind of ties in and works out. And that program is one that's offered if you become a Texas CSR and you work for a year, then you can, this other program out of California, you can go through them for a bachelor's. So after I did about 1.5 years of reporting, found out about that, and so I'll have that finished up in about a year. But yeah, as far as I was able to finish debt-free and already be making really great money, that I had friends graduating from 4-year universities with a ton of debt, and they were in very great jobs that you would look at and say, oh, that's a really great paying job. And then I remember one day a friend mentioned salary of what she was making, and I went, wow, I can't believe that I, with 50 weeks of technical vocational training, had doubled that already in my first year. And so that's not to sit here, I'm not one that's really, I don't like talking income, but at the same time, I do know that that's something that you come into this and you wonder, is the money there, is the opportunity there? And the answer is emphatically yes, it is. And so yeah, I was within a month of working, I was able to move out of my parents' house and get a place, and I, within 6 months, was able to replace my crappy car with a car that did not shake at red lights and had really good air conditioning. So it's been good.
So if you get a bachelor's degree,
Yeah.
does that
Changes nothing.
Oh, I was gonna say, yeah, because you probably still make the same.
Yeah.
You're just improving your.
It's really just
your
because
knowledge.
I wanted to kind of finish what I had started out with at 18, but it won't change anything. Yeah, pay, it doesn't change. So it's just really me being hyper competitive with myself. but yeah.
And that's a good point, because a lot of people ask, should I just do my associates in court reporting versus the certificate program? And the truth is, once you're out here, nobody cares if you had an associate's or not.
Yeah.
Or if it's a certificate, nobody cares. They don't look at that at all. So they may be in the federal, I don't know, maybe when you're in federal.
Yeah, I heard of one, I think is it Kristen that has mentioned that her judge liked when he was in the hiring process, he liked that she had a bachelor's, as far as getting hired with a judge, but at the same time, there's, that's not going to be an issue. That will not at all hold you back, because they just want to see, are you a certified shorthand reporter in the state of Texas?
Are you freelance or full-time?
I'm freelance with one firm full-time, if that. So I don't work with the court. I work with Hoffman Reporting, so they're my full-time firm. But I do freelance work. I do depositions. I've done political stuff with some politicians that came to town and had a big roundtable discussion, and that was really cool. I've done medical hearings. So I've done a ton of a huge array of things. I also did take court, subbed in court, and so I did a lot in my first year. And then after that first year, I was able to kind of say, okay, this is the stuff I like in the career. And so I focused a little bit more on that and less on other aspects. But yeah, and so my week in freelance looks different from what Arminia is doing in the court. I might go to take 5 or 6 depositions in a week. Or another week I might just take 1. and then be kind of catching up on editing. Because when you take a deposition versus in the courtroom, you're writing down what happens, and then you wait till someone comes back and says, hey, remember this day, this witness, create that transcript. For me, every job I go out and take, I have to create the transcript within 8 to 10 business days. So I'm in a constant process of take a job, output it, edit that transcript, get it out. And in court, you definitely will get that busy as well, because you'll have taken so many days of court that you kind of always have
Yeah, you
record
always have
requests.
pages.
Yeah. So,
But like she said, and some of the firms, they even want it within 5 to 7 days, you know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
everything she does, she has to transcribe, and in court, you don't have to transcribe everything. In my court, I do have to transcribe a lot of it, but I don't have to transcribe everything.
Yeah.
And I don't have to transcribe it within 7 to 8 days most of the time, you know, unless it's a rush. But that doesn't happen very much with the criminal especially.
yeah. And then in depot side, rush is, you know, I've had a 24-hour rush where I sat in the job all day, and then at the end of the job, the attorney said, by the way, I'm really sorry, but I need that by the end of the day tomorrow. And so a job that typically would take me a week to edit, I had to stay up all night. So it's definitely, this is a career that if you like to work hard, you will excel. If you don't, it's going to be kind of harder. But in that case, when you have days like that where you go home and go, okay, this is what I'm doing for the next 8 hours, you're very well compensated for it as well. Because it's, yeah, you're not charging the same rate. So for everything that is kind of unpleasant with the work side of things, that paycheck balances it out. Yeah. Yeah. So any
Does
other?
your firm, do they decide how much you get paid for the rushes? Do they?
Yeah, they have set rates. So they've got rates for our standard turnaround, rushes, technical, and it kind of just will vary on how the proceeding goes. But yeah.
And it's an algorithm on length and all of that too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's definitely stuff that they have, I'd say in general, that firms have in place to freelancing, to make sure that freelance is well compensated. Yes?
Do any of y'all actually have any problem with procrastination? And if you are a procrastinator, how do you keep yourself in the butt to get that brief out or the dispo out?
Yeah, no, I am not the biggest procrastinator, typically. I say typically, that there's, the caveat that sometimes there's just that day where you're like, I don't want to do this. But I'd say that for me, having constant deadlines is really good, because I can look at the calendar and say, okay, this job is due Friday, and if I edit at a rate of, let's say 50 to 100 pages a day, and I've got 400 pages I need to turn in, then I'm gonna need to work on this for 4 days. And so just kind of if you just always keep up with your workload, look at a calendar and just really remind yourself that, okay, this was due, then that's kind of the incentive to, well, I don't wanna get fired, so I'm gonna have to turn it in. It is though a job, I remember I had a 1,600 page transcript request. And so I had 1,600 pages, and I had, I think I turned it out in about 40 days. And so for me, what I did is I took the 1,600 pages and I broke down, okay, what is my rate? How fast am I editing this? And that one was such a bad job as far as just difficult material that I maybe could get 75 pages a day. And so I made like a calendar so that I could keep up with every day how much I had done, because I knew with something like of that size, I've got to have an end goal in mind and short-term goals also. So it's just a matter of kind of like in school, you'll develop getting good at setting parameters and, okay, try to hit this mark today for practicing. If you can take that into your work life once you certify, then you'll be fine. It's just a matter of just creating structure to operate within.
I'm going to add on to that real quick. I'm glad you brought that up about procrastination, because I'm just going to give you a warning. Court reporting in the freelance area is not a job where you can procrastinate, okay? These firms, if they want they say we need our job within 5 days, 7 days, they want their job within 5 days, 7 days. These attorneys, if they say, well, you told me 5, 7 days, they will be calling that firm will be calling you. If you are making a habit that you do not turn in your jobs within that week because you're procrastinating, do not expect that firm to be calling you back. And then word travels fast in the court reporting community. So if you do not want to get the reputation where you do not turn in your work on time, because work travels fast and then it gets around and other firms don't want to hire you either. So procrastination is like the biggest thing you do not want to do in court reporting. And of course, sometimes life happens, you know, you never know, you get sick and, you know, there's sometimes, you know, when you get behind, but just to, you know, do purposefully procrastinate, you need to really rethink your organizational skills and scheduling, because that's something that really won't be tolerated very well in the freelance world. In court, I have different deadlines. So if I have a criminal trial, sometimes it's not due until another 2 months. So we have different deadlines, but freelance is one place that you can't be messing up.
And the thing is,
Punctuality too.
Oh, and punctuality,
Being late,
yes.
oh my God, you just screwed it up.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a hard thing for Mexicanos, you know. We're a little bit late, but we've got to own that and do that. I'll say it like that.
but
Me and my
firms-
judge are on the same page.
I think firms, most of them, when they send you out like, hey, here's your job notification with freelancing, I want to say every firm has a please show up 30 minutes before showtime. I try to show up, I aim to show up about an hour to 45 minutes before, to kind of account for getting lost, traffic, parking, and then by the time that, you know, my butt's in my seat and I'm ready to start setting up, I'm punctually there at the 30 minutes before. So just start to kind of in your brain already, just remember that, you know, when you get out to the working world, a 10 o'clock depot means you're leaving for that job maybe at 8 in the morning. You know, it's not get there at 10. But yeah, that's a good question. Yeah.
So when you're working for a firm and you're starting to find that maybe you're not up to the standard yet that you want to be as far as scheduling yourself, if they just dole out orders, or do you just pretty much just say, oh wait, I can handle like 2 right now?
That's a really good question, and that depends on what you choose to what capacity you choose to work in when you get out of school. So immediately out of school, you can say, hey, I want to go sub for court. And then for you, it's a matter of when the court calls you and says, hey, can you fill in? And you can say yay or nay. You can also say, I want to truly freelance, which means a bunch of firms, freelance firms will call you or send you out jobs and say, hey, can you take this? And you say yes or no. And that's just dependent on what you think you can handle. Or like in my case, I started almost immediately with a firm that I was full-time with them. And so I work specifically with them, and so they do send out a schedule to their full-time reporters. And in that instance, you don't get much of a say as far as if they've got a job that they need you to fill, then you're filling it. I will say my boss with my firm is great, and if I do call her and say, hey, this is how many pages I'm at, and she's aware of deadlines and things, then she'll say, okay, then maybe tomorrow you need to just be on call with the firm and not be taking a job so that you can catch up on some editing. So with the scenario I'm in, it's just a matter of good communication with your office, being willing to take jobs on heavy weeks, knowing that, okay, next week might be light, and just communicating with them to ensure that they know when your deadlines are, and they know kind of what your expectations of what you can output feasibly is. So if there's a period where I go, okay, I've got 1,000 pages right now that got all piled on within 4 days, then I'll email them and say, here's what I've got, here are my due dates, I foresee this one taking this long, so I'm going to need a day or 2 off to try to get some of those caught up on those. So yeah, it'll just depend on how busy you want to be. Yes.
When you edit, are you listening to the whole audio?
Yeah. Yeah, so I always record audio. I've got audio recording in 3 different spots, 2 recorders and then through my software. You don't want to rely on that audio just because worst case scenario, you want to have written down everything as verbatim as you can. But at the same time, people mumble, they talk over each other, they talk fast. And even if you wrote it perfectly and you feel like I got every bit, I would still say go back and listen to it with the audio because you can do it more perfectly. So what I say editing, what that is going through, there's scoping and proofing. And scoping is just where I go back and go word for word with the audio, and then I'll send that to a proofer, who will then be the second set of eyes that I pay to just read it without the audio and say, okay, here's your errors. So by the time that transcript is put out, it's been looked through with a fine-tooth comb at least twice. Yeah. Oh,
I was gonna try to put the little
yeah.
audio sync with E-tips. Just to show. Well, this is the software, no, it's not really showing right. Okay, yeah, this would be a transcript right here.
Can you full screen?
Oh, let's see. There. So this is just like a sample transcript of all the writing. It's not showing the steno, but this is, and then up there, oh, it's not showing it either. Oh, there it is, play. Okay, like right up here, there's our play. So it's audio sync. So the recording, if you put your mouse on here and push play, it would start playing the audio from this sentences, what was said right here. If I go down here and I push right here, it'll play, oh shoot, sorry. It will play the audio from that sentence that was right there. So it's audio sync, so that's what she's talking about, the audio. Because with freelance, I would say, especially if it's a videotape, yes, you need to go through the audio, not once, but twice. Because a lot of the freelances, their transcripts show up in our courtrooms. And so in the civil side, and I guess you have experience with this, the civil side, you probably had to audio sync some of these transcripts together. They actually show the transcript, all the words, and then they play the audio. So everybody in that courtroom is gonna know if this court reporter did a good job on her transcript or not, because they're hearing the audio and seeing all the words.
Like subtitles.
Yes. So, so when you do freelance and it's a video deposition, then yes, I encourage you to go twice with the audio because they do end up playing it in court.
Yeah.
I just have one question. What happens when you just really goof up really bad? Like, I was looking at something on TV the other day, maybe in CNN or something, and you see the crawl space at the bottom, and it had a completely different word than what they were announcing. What happens when that happens?
As far as closed captions on TV, that can be kind of two different things. Some channels have gone to like dictation, I think, or maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong. And in those cases, when you see like huge, like the other day I watched one that was just nothing was even in English, and I knew, okay, that's not a reporter. I think they're trying to just use software to create the subtitles and it's not working. Because I feel like what you're saying, where you said it was just one word that just was different, that could just be the closed captioner hit one wrong key and it got sent out. So that's why captioning is a whole other it's a beast because it is so difficult because everything is live. Your mistakes are there. So for me, I'm not giving real time. So real time is where the attorneys or the judge.
This is real time right here, what he's doing.
Yeah, they could just see everything that's being written immediately. So that's kind of like the closed captioning where you want to do it perfectly. But
this is what y'all are writing on your machine right here.
Yeah.
That's a steno.
And this is what it looks like when you're in a deposition and you're writing here and then it's popping up in English. Yeah. So for me, if I make a mistake and hit one wrong key, I know, okay, that's just going to be more that I have to go back and edit. But if you're real timing it as you get better, then you've got to really get this down pretty perfectly. But the good thing is, y'all are just in school for now. That's not the goal. The goal right now is not perfect real time. It's passing your speed tests.
Yeah.
And after every speed test, you get an hour per test to edit your mistakes. Yeah. Yes.
So you said when you started with your firm, you were basically working with them full time.
Yeah.
For the different firms, are there like depositions and different things that you can do part time, like at night or on the weekends?
Mm-hmm. When I freelanced, I didn't work for a firm. I've never worked for a firm. I've only done overflow for firms. So I would work for whatever firm called and had a job. They would send me emails now. Well, back then what they called, but now they send emails and put job postings. Hey, when is this job covered? So you don't have to just work for one firm. You can actually just work for multiple and do your own self-employed.
As far as evenings or weekends, do you ever get requests? I get very rarely have I had
Very
those.
rarely.
Yeah.
Monday through Friday, 9 to 5.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I've had maybe in 2 years of working, I've had 2 Saturday depositions maybe, and I think I've had maybe 2 depositions that were weird times. One started at 6 in the morning. That was not fun. And then the other started at 5 p.m. and that also was not fun. But the majority are 9 to 5.
Yeah. For the last 2 weeks, I got 2 emails for 2 different doctor depots
yeah.
at 7 o'clock.
Doctors are notorious because they're keeping their full-time schedule, and then when they have their depositions, they're going to be outside of their full-time schedule. So those would be the ones that are going to run weird hours. But as far as working part-time, that's just a matter of, I guess, if you choose to accept only a part-time amount of jobs within the 9 to 5 hours, kind of. Yes?
Good question. What happens if you don't understand what you're saying?
You drink.
Kind of like.
Yeah, it kind of depends. I've had, like, let's say you're taking someone with a foreign accent. It's really good that you speak out when you need to speak out. That's important that from day one you be willing to interrupt if you have to. Even if you're in court. I took a court case that they had somebody come up who needed a translator, but they weren't using one. And so I continued to interrupt until, for the first couple issues, every time I got to a point that I couldn't understand, I would say, I'm sorry, could you repeat that? I might say what the last word was I got. Eventually in that scenario, the judge could tell I was having such a hard time, I was giving her a look like, this isn't going well. And so she said, hold on, can you come up to the bench? And so at that moment, she called all the attorneys up in the trial, and she said, are you getting this? And I said, I am not. I need them to use the interpreter. And so they said, okay, we're going to switch to interpreter so that we can get a clear record. So it's just a matter of using your voice, speaking up. If they're not using an interpreter, but you're having trouble understanding it so much that you don't think you're making any sense, then speak up and say, you know what, we might need to recess this until we can get an interpreter. Or if you think you can get it, but it's just a matter of clarification, then clarify as you need it.
And you can stop it. And if you're in court, you know, and the judge hasn't caught on, I would just, you know, I need a break. And then at that point, I would talk to the judge and just let him or her know, you know, I'm not understanding this. A lot of times for me, my attorneys, the state, they're really good, and they know, okay, this person has an accent, and so they'll kind of like repeat everything they said. But at the same time, you know, it's just like, if I'm having a hard time, the jury's having a hard time. So they want the jury to understand. So if nobody's understanding them, a lot of times they're really good in court. Not all the time, but a lot of times. But if you're in a depo, I mean, at the same time, you can just, you know, I'm sorry, I need a little break. Talk to the attorney that hired you, you know, and tell them what's going on.
Do you ever request that they repeat it?
Oh yeah, that's what I'm like if I'm in a depo, like she's saying, if the doctor said something that I didn't understand, I would just, as quickly as I can, interject while they're, you know, cut them off sooner than, because you don't want them to get through a whole paragraph and then say, I didn't get that.
And you kind of can repeat, you know, exactly what you got to that point. And then, you know, and a lot of times they'll just not say that word, but they'll say something else, and it's just like, oh well.
Yeah.
And that's where you continue on, because you show that that's where you broke. You know, at that point you ask, what was that you said? Mm-hmm. And then, you know, you write what they say.
Are you recording when you're asking?
Mm-hmm. My audio doesn't stop in that instance.
So when you go back and listen.
Yeah, and I'll still, for me, I put myself in that transcript. Because it's also one of those things that's kind of a protection for yourself. Like if they ever go back and say, what is, you know, are you sure that I said this? Well, I've got me in the transcript 4 times saying, could you repeat that, to show that I was trying to make this record as clear as possible. So it's kind of, and you're doing a verbatim record, so it needs to be 100% what happened. So, did you?
I was just wanting to ask, what was the name of that YouTube video that we were just watching?
Oh, they do a it's called Stanographer. His name is Stanley Sakai, and he's just another court reporting captioning whiz, I'll put it that way. He taught himself steno. Is
he writing Eminem?
Yeah.
That language.
So yeah,
I think it's Eminem.
Yeah, he's a cart provider. He does a lot of cart captioning, and they fly him. He's a young one also. They fly him all over the world, and he's at like Microsoft meetings and eBay, and he's just everywhere. And so he has a name. He calls himself the Stanographer.
And he taught himself?
Yeah, he taught
in
himself.
7 languages or something.
And he has a blog, so you can go to YouTube and look it up. Stanographer.
Mm-hmm. But yeah. So, is that everything? Okay. Basically, I'd say if y'all are sitting here, I would encourage every single one of you to keep with it when classes start officially in January. You know, you can't go wrong with this career. I'm getting emails all the time for, hey, we need this job filled, So San Antonio, the market is really ripe right now, and we need people out there that can take the jobs. So please take them so I can take a vacation.
That's what I said, so I can retire.
Yeah.
Anybody have any last questions before Linda starts teaching again?
Cool. Yeah, thanks all.
Are y'all clapping because I'm going to start teaching again?
Yeah.
No, we were just.
All right, so where are we? We're right over here.
Oh, I will. Drive safe.
Do what? Tanya, what time do we want to go till?
You have a sister?
Guys, are y'all okay to go till 9, or do you want to?
Well, I mean, I think
Okay,
that
who-
for sure, I think we need to stop this at 8:30.
That's what I'm thinking.
Okay.
Because we still have to inventory, pack it up, and we've got to take some pictures, and we've got to present some certificates, and get y'all some keyboards for y'all to keep until we are able to get you new writers, so that we can, maintain that speed. So 8:30 good? Can y'all hang? Sure. Yes. Sweet.
15 minutes.
Are y'all, did y'all want to continue this, or y'all already checked out? Y'all already checked out? Okay. Yeah, because
It's quite all right, because you got a
My
whole
feelings won't get
semester
hurt.
of theory if you're continuing on.
An extra
So,
15 minutes makes no difference.
Yeah, 15 minutes.
it will next semester.
I have a personal teacher at home. So.
Where do you excuse me?
Excuse us.
Excuse us.
Everybody's gonna be showing up at your house.
We want to see, we want to watch.
No.
There's a subscription fee for that. I'll give you the address.
Should we turn off the recording now?
Can we turn it off?
Smart ass. Oh, yeah, they come in.
Well, I guess I can.
What are we doing?
Okay, you want to collect these, and then collect the books?
Okay, start collecting the paper.
Yeah.
Let me go get mine. Oh, the books, want the books?
Yes.
Yeah, paper. And then.
Because you're doing, she'll get those.
Actually, it's BGS. Sorry.
Starting to break. You've already been checked out? Or no? No. Okay, well, hold on to this for a minute. Because you might have your, you don't have that. Okay, then I'll take it. Have you been checked out?
I haven't been checked out.
Do you have your inventory?
No, I didn't realize.
Okay.
I have it on card, I think, if you want to go get it. I think I probably have
Sylvia?
Yes.
No, don't worry, because I've got a master.
Okay.
I tell you
Okay.
what,
Good.
you can just stick that with your other stuff that we're gonna give to David's right.
Okay.
So anything you find that's related, just give it to David.
Gotcha.
What's that?
Yeah.
You're welcome. So. She's getting those, she's getting the lines. Yeah, to take our time.